Welcome to the Two Wealth Show, a show that shares how you can create real wealth for you and your family. I'm one of your hosts, Justin Bogard, and my co-host is Elizabeth Sickles, aka Super E. I am a real estate note investor, specializing in performing residential real estate debt. I find the deals, acquire them for my own portfolio, as well as educate investors while walking them through the process of owning a real estate note. My co-host Super E, a real estate investor, specializing in short-term rentals and the management of them. She connects investors with short-term tenants and manages everything in between. Our show is sponsored by BrightPath Notes and Elizabeth Maora. You can find out more information by visiting our websites at brightpathnotes.com and elizabethmaora.com. Hey everybody, this is Justin Bogard, BrightPath Notes, also the co-host on the Two Wealth Show, and this is episode number 13.
Hey everybody, I'm Elizabeth with Elizabeth Maora, and we have a very special guest with us, a returning guest, because he has been our most downloaded podcast so far. So the number one guru in safety is Mr. Justin Ford, who is with Breezeway. So welcome back, Mr. Ford.
Hey, it's great to be back here with you guys.
Yeah, we had so much fun, we had to have you on again.
Yeah, we still have work to do. There's problems to be solved.
That's right. And this isn't boring. This is good stuff. I liked it. Well, Justin, Elizabeth, this episode is brought to you by Integrated Health Solutions. We are passionate about your health and wellness, and we know you want to enjoy a vibrant, pain-free, active lifestyle. But when you are in pain, this seems almost impossible. In order to be pain-free, move fluidly, and enjoy an optimal level of functionality, you need a personalized yet integrated, research-based, and clinically proven approach, and that's what we do. To learn more, visit us at ihsindy.com or cryotherapyindy.com.
Yes, see Dr. Chabelle. He's amazing.
He is. He's fantastic.
And I'm going there tomorrow, actually. So just a quick recap of our last podcast. Justin Ford really schooled us on fire extinguishers, on decks, on smoke detectors, all kinds of really interesting things. The app that they have that you can walk through your own personal house. So not only things to do with investment properties, but also your personal property and commercial properties also. So we are very excited to have him back, and we've got a lineup of things that he wants to talk to you about this time. So, Mr. Ford, where would you like to start, sir?
You know, it's a great point that you made for people's houses too. And granted, my focus is on safety and rental properties, specifically short-term rental properties. But everything I'm covering is stuff that happens in the home. It just happens even more in a rental property because people aren't familiar with the homes that they're staying in. So this is good for anybody to listen to if they want to listen to us. This is all the topics in here relevant for everybody who lives in something other than a tent, I guess.
Which right now it could be several people, right?
It could be several people. You know, I did want to talk about. You mentioned in our last show we talked about deck collapses.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people who didn't listen to the show because since July 1st, there have been a lot of debt collapses in the United States, and I mean a lot. I'm aware right now between up in New York, a really big one that just happened down in Virginia Beach, over 38 people being hospitalized from debt collapses around the United States since the last time we did this podcast. And
wow,
every one of them would have been prevented by a simple inspection. And the key thing, I don't know if I highlighted it before, and I want to highlight it right now. A well-built deck won't collapse. Doesn't matter how much weight you put on it. And they're talking in this one in Virginia Beach that there were 20 people or 10 people or 40 people, however many people were on the deck. Could have been 50. The deck is built well. It won't collapse. This deck was not built well. And I immediately kind of was able to look. I looked up online and found the rental property. I could identify in the advertising photos that the ledger board was nailed in and that there were no joist hangers for the deck. It's 101. I could have, my 9-year-old could have looked at it and said, "Hey, Dad, that doesn't look safe." And sure enough, now, experts are in the news being quoted, and it's exactly what I had pointed out too. And it just, why aren't people looking at this? This is a deck on the ocean with salt air. They just need to stop. Everyone needs to go out and look under your deck. There's not joist hangers, and that ledger board isn't bolted in with nice big thick 1/2-inch bolts. If you're seeing nails that are holding the structure together, you need to get a contractor over there and you need to address it, because 1 or 30 people, your deck's going to fall if it's not bolted on properly.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason why we should, push this nationally, Elizabeth. We need to get the word out there. We're just trying to help people. We're trying to save lives.
Right.
The first, I'm wearing a ski shirt today. First chair, last call. I'm more the first chair kind of guy than the last call kind of guy. But the very first deck collapse I ever saw was at a ski resort. I got on a chairlift and we're riding up, and I looked over and there was a hot tub on the deck, and it had completely collapsed in. And everybody going by on the chairlift is looking over and pointing, going, "Wow, look at that." They put a hot tub on a deck that was not supported well. What is it, 8 pounds per gallon, and you've got a 400-gallon hot tub on your deck, and then 8 people and snow loads. People just don't realize. I just think they just think that it's there. It's a deck. Someone built it.
Right.
It must be good enough.
Right. Don't worry about it. It's up there. It's lasted this long, right?
That's
Wrong.
That's right.
Wrong. Wow.
And
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
so, Justin, one of the questions that I get a lot from new clients, so the property owners, is, hey, well, I really want to have some bikes and this and that. And I tell them, absolutely not. We are not doing bikes. So can you dive into some of the amenities that, people are just trying to be great hosts, right? So they want to provide this for their guests, but what are the liabilities with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And let's also approach that from the point of view that I'm sure some of your listeners rent themselves. Maybe they don't own a home, and they don't, they're not going to ever rent out their house, and maybe they don't have bikes at their own home, but maybe someday they're going to rent a house at an Airbnb or a VRBO or whatever it may be. So this is something to think about from multiple angles. The one thing with bikes, oh my gosh, when I was a property manager, I used to hear it all the time. The owner would call me up and say, "Hey, we're heading out. House is all set for renters. And by the way, we left a couple of our old bikes here. The renters can use them." Oh, that's great. Let's leave the old bikes that you don't want anymore for customers that are going to sue you if they don't work. And that's a common theme I hear all the time on all the amenities. No one ever leaves the best amenities. They don't go buy brand new top quality bikes and say, "Hey, let's leave these out here for renters to use." It's all the old stuff. And flip again. You're renting an Airbnb. Do you want to get on a bike that you don't know if the last person who just rode it loosened the bolt to adjust the height and then couldn't find a wrench and went, "Screw this," and they had to go catch their flight and they never put it back together? You want to go 20 miles an hour down a hill on it? I don't.
Right.
So,
or hey, don't please go ahead and replace the brakes. They were kind of iffy when I last rode it.
yeah, exactly. That stuff needs to stay out of it. And Elizabeth, I don't know if you've ever rented a bike from a rental company. I have. When you go in there, you sign your life away. There's like 4 pages of paperwork. You won't sue us. We won't sue you. They adjust the handlebars. They adjust the seat height. They make sure it's measured for you. They practically walk you out of the rental place with the bike in handcuffs to make sure that you're the person who's going to ride that bike and no one else, because of how concerned they are about that. And then I see these homeowners that rent out these houses and they just leave them in the garage and there's nothing done. No, stop. Don't do that ever, 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 ever. And it's not just bikes, it's boats. Oh my goodness. I see people leave kayaks and canoes out for their renters to use. No life jackets, are not the right size, they're moldy and stinky because the last renters got them all wet and didn't dry them, and okay, then the renters don't use them. There was an incident that happened 2 years ago up in Michigan where at the beginning of the summer season, a father and son went out in some kayaks. The water condition was too cold. They shouldn't have been going out in the kayaks to begin with, but they're staying at an Airbnb. There they were, so they must be okay to use, right? Because they're included with the rental. And what they didn't know was because that kayak gets used so much more at the rental property than the owner did, it'd been dragged up and down the beach every week, all year long, last summer, the summer before, it had worn through the plastic. And so it had a leak. So they get out in the water. Now the kayak's leaking and sinking, and the dad's trying to do what he can. Unfortunately, both perished because the son got in the water, got hypothermia, cold, dad trying to help save his son, and that was the end of that. So, yeah, the same thing as a bike rental company. You go run a kayak, you're going to sign your life away. They're going to do inspections. They're going to make sure the life jacket fits. Don't use those things when you go stay at a rental unless you've gone through a professional rental company that's insured and specifically has the liability protection, knows everything about every detail about those kayaks, and is inspecting them before you as a renter use them, or before the homeowner offers those out as well.
Absolutely. We also get some questions sometimes on if we have baby equipment. We do not do any of that, but can you talk about that, Justin?
Yeah, baby equipment is falls into that same thing. I see that all the time as well, where the homeowner is left behind, the crib and the high chair that belong to their kids, and let's throw it in the rental for the renters to use. It's in the closet. Probably the worst thing you can do. I don't know if either of you have ever gone to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission website. It's hundreds of thousands of pages of recalls, and probably the most recalled stuff is baby stuff. Pack and plays that collapse because they're not constructed properly, and 5 years down the road enough kids have died. Now it's on the recall list, but because you bought it 10 years ago, you had no idea that it was recalled 5 years ago. And I see those being offered, and then it collapses, and then you've got that on your hands. You should never, ever have any baby equipment left behind in your house for renters to use. And as a renter, don't ever use any of the baby equipment you find in a house. There was an incident in the Outer Banks of North Carolina last summer where people came in and used a high chair that was sitting in the house for their 3-year-old. They didn't know that the renters the last week had broken one of the releases for the tray that slides in. So it was only being held on one side. That wasn't enough for that 3-year-old, and that 3-year-old fell forward and fell out of it and broke its neck.
Oh,
it was a
Jesus.
very, very serious incident that led to a lawsuit. The homeowner back in Ohio had no idea any of this was going on. They didn't even remember that they had that high chair there. It was like in the garage or something, and some renter brought it up and they just ignored it, and people just were using it. And in the end, they paid quite a price for that.
Wow.
Wow.
So are you familiar with the company Baby Quip?
Yeah. And there's some great baby quips that go on. There are companies that rent baby gear. I mean, you don't even want to refer a babysitter anymore. You don't want that liability on your hands. I know when I was a property manager, my insurance company said, you can't refer babysitters. I mean, you could. It's a $10,000 a year premium, but do you want to pay that? I mean, you don't know,
Right.
Unless you're doing a full background check on who this babysitter is. What happens if, God, I'm not even going to go into the topics. You can just use your imagination what this babysitter might do or might have for training, or what their past background might be. If you're not checking all that stuff and you're saying, hey, yeah, use Casey as a babysitter. She's great. She watched my kid once. No, don't do that. Don't refer babysitters. Let the person do their own research.
Absolutely. It's all about having the least liability on yourself as possible, right? And the safest property. And we actually, whenever we have people that do ask us about baby equipment, there's actually 2 different Baby Quip franchises here in Indianapolis, and we use one of them, and they've been, the guests have been super happy with them. So,
yeah. And they're checking the stuff every week. And, in this environment we live in today, there's sanitization that's going on. They're going to make sure they're checking for recalls. They're insured to do it. So that's the best solution. One of the other amenities I want to touch on real quick, and it's probably not as popular in Indianapolis, but it is down certainly in Hilton Head in Florida, is golf carts. A lot of rental includes golf carts.
Yeah.
I would never do that. I don't even think I'd ever want to get into a golf cart that was used with a rental property. I'd want to deal directly with the professional one. I know last year it was actually in Hilton Head, or it was in part somewhere in South Carolina. Some renters rented a vacation home that had a golf cart, and they lost the cord that charges the golf cart. So they used an actual household extension cord and modified it to plug it in to charge it, which was overloaded the circuit, caught the house on fire, and burned the house down. So
Oh my
um,
gosh.
if there's not enough of a reason to know, what are these kids doing? My file here on my desk is full of all the news reports of people having accidents with golf carts and crashing them and all that stuff. So yeah, not a good idea.
Wow.
The things that happen.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And we also wanted to talk about, because this is a huge one, dryers.
Good one.
Gas and electric household dryers. So a few years ago, and maybe it's even more than a few, federal government, safety commission, everybody came out and said, hey, you know what? We're having a lot of dryer fires with these white vinyl exhaust fan hoses. You know what I'm talking about,
Yep.
Justin? You probably still have one in your house right now, don't you? That white flexible dryer hose.
Well, luckily we have the washer dryer combo, so we don't even use a hose anymore. It's a ventless.
Oh, nice. Well, I know people do. See them every day. Every single time I go in and do an inspection on a house, there's still that white vinyl. Those are a huge fire hazard.
Yeah.
Huge fire hazard. You can't make them anymore. You can't go into a hardware store and even get them for that purpose because they collected so much lint, they'd catch on fire easily. So first and foremost, if you've got a white vinyl dryer vent hose, get rid of it, upgrade right now. They're just not safe. You want metal. And even when you get into metal, those foil flexible ones still aren't good. You want the semi-rigid or rigid dryer vents.
Yeah.
If you want to see something interesting, I'll give you a photo so you can put a link to this after the podcast. I saw recently where there'd probably been 8 fires in this one particular dryer vent. Unfortunately, they all put themselves out before they caught on fire, but it was like tree rings because you could see the carbon build up in the dryer vent. Most people don't realize they've probably at one point in time or another had a fire in their dryer vent. Unfortunately, the dryer stopped, the vent closed, and it snuffed itself out. But there's more than you can imagine that actually continue on and become a fire.
Wow.
And so keeping those dryer vents cleaned out, you need to clean those annually. And it's really easy for anybody who listens to this podcast to check your dryer vent. First and foremost, just throw a wet towel in, put it on high heat, and go outside when it's a little cooler in the morning and look and see where it's venting. And you should see a real nice strong flow of steam coming out of the dryer vent from that towel after it's heated up for 5 minutes. If you're not seeing that, if you're seeing that the little vent door is not quite opening all the way, any type of restriction, that's going to be holding lint in that's building up. That means you need to be getting that thing cleaned out and looked at as soon as possible.
Yeah.
You'll find a mouse nest in there. Or the other sign is if your dryer's taking a long time to dry, potentially your thermostat's overheating and turning off in the dryer because it's so clogged up with the vent. So you hear that a lot. People, Elizabeth, you've probably had those phone calls from renters where we've run the dryer for 2 hours and the clothes still aren't dry. That's the first warning sign that the dryer vent's probably backed up and the thermostat's switching off the heat.
Wow. Man, you're just full of great news today, aren't you?
We spend half our lives in our homes, and there's a lot of things that go on in there. We're so diligent about changing the oil in our car and going in and getting our car serviced and our wheel bearings checked. Where I live in Maine, part of an annual inspection of your car that you have to pay for every year is they check your wheel bearings and your ball joints and all these things. And that's just a little car. And yet we live in these 4,000 square foot buildings and just assume that we'll deal with it when it finally does break. And you just can't do that.
That, and because of the pandemic going on, we're obviously in our homes a heck of a lot more than we used to be. So it's even more important now to stay on top of your maintenance, on top of all your appliances and mechanicals and things like that, right?
Exactly. And to recap on the dryers, I will tell you, when I rent or stay in a short-term rental, I'm just the kind of guy that I'm not going home with dirty laundry. I do all my laundry before I fly home or go back home, because there's a washer and dryer there. And why pay for it at home when I can get it done here, including the price of the rental? And I'm not the only one who thinks that way. So I firmly believe a washer and a dryer in a short-term rental house probably gets used 4 to 5 times as much as one that's in a domestic home, just because everybody can just wash and use stuff. So they're getting even more use than you typically would imagine.
Yeah, why not? You bring up a great point.
Mm-hmm.
So, speaking of,
neither one of you will probably rent to me now. That damn Justin, he's raising the electric bill.
I mean, yeah,
We're raise the nightly rate. We're put on a service fee.
We gotta bring our own stuff with us. Jeez.
Justin Ford's staying here. Was that a $20 laundry electrical surge on here?
Now, the deposit will be 3 times the weekly amount, right?
Right.
So speaking of dryers and fires, what about like outdoor gas grills or fire pits and stuff like that? Has that ever come up as an issue?
It has, and there's been a lot in the news. I actually made connection recently with some friends of a woman in Nashville. Your readers or your listeners can Google this story. You know, she fell in a fire pit and was severely burned just a couple of weeks ago. Well-known person in Nashville. So it happens a lot. There was a serious incident also recently where people staying at an Airbnb have a fire pit. Renters came in, had a fire in the fire pit. They didn't extinguish it properly and left. Next day, cleaners came in, cleaned the property, did what they're supposed to do. Part of their checklist wasn't to go out and check the fire pit and make sure the fire is completely out. That night, so less than 24 hours since the last renters had left and not properly extinguished the fire, new renters came in. 3-year-old went down to the fire pit to take a look at it, whatever, but he fell in and it was full of hot coals and he has 3rd-degree burns all over his body from that. So that's a more serious incident that we've seen this year, but there are a lot of those incidents. The most common accident at fire pits are from young children falling in. I saw my own daughter, since these stories have come out, my own daughter on the 4th of July, she tried to do a cartwheel near the fire pit. I'm like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And they're down there roasting s'mores, they're doing that stuff. You got to watch and pay close attention to the kids around the fire pit. That's the number 1 leading accident right now at them. And number 2, they got to be properly extinguished. And it's 5-gallon bucket isn't necessarily always enough. Garden hose, saturate that thing. And if you're an owner that has fire pits, get the cleaners to go down and check it again and dump some more water on it, make sure they're out.
Great point.
Absolutely.
And you also, I want to just touch on before we're out of time, on the app that you have created, because it's pretty cool.
So we're having a lot of fun with the safety inspections and what we're doing right now. And it's really exciting to see that people care. There was a shooting recently. I'm sorry, folks in Nashville, I'm picking on you, but there was a shooting. There's been a lot of parties and shootings at Airbnbs. You see it in the news, usually from large groups of people. But this led this particular property owner going, you know what, I really want to get my home safety certified. And we went in and did that. And there was a lot of things they hadn't even considered. And although it was a shooting, which I don't really have anything to do to make your house safer from that, just pick better renters. It rolled into that. And we're definitely seeing the movement now where people want to have a safe home. And I don't think people get yet how important that is from a marketing point of view. Are you going to take your kids on a ride at the traveling fair on the
Ferris wheel?
Ferris wheel. Yes. Thank gosh you can see me motioning.
Yeah.
You want to take them on the Ferris wheel there or the Ferris wheel at Disney World? Probably Disney World, right?
Yeah.
Not because you pay a whole lot more money to get in there, but because of the quality, and that they've done a lot of work and inspected and done that. And same thing applies over with a short-term rental. Do you want to stay in a short-term rental that hasn't been safety inspected and someone hasn't taken care to do everything to make sure you're going to be safe there? Or do you want to stay in a property that maybe it has a smoke detector? I don't know. And I think people are starting to figure out now that marketing to safety is really good. And it's going to make a difference when it comes down to this 2-3 bedroom homes that are right next to each other, both have a pool, but this one's safety certified and inspected, and they've got the best safety features in here for my family. And that one, we don't know. So
Yeah,
it's been exciting to see that.
that's a great point, because that's how, new moms would shop for certain things for their baby or for a car that they get. They put that in mind first, and you should be putting your home in mind first, because you're obviously, now we're staying in our homes a lot more than we used to. So
Yeah, there's just a home today, Justin, burns so much faster than a home 20 years ago. And
yeah,
it's not to pick on IKEA or any of those other things, but we're putting products in our homes now that are inexpensive, a lot of chemicals in them. You don't have much time. You don't have much time to be alerted to get out. And so having a safe home from all different aspects is very important.
absolutely. Absolutely. Justin, this has been a great episode today. Thanks for getting on our show again and sharing with us all the things that we need to focus on and worry about. I know I continue to learn a heck of a lot about the things that I just gloss over in a house when I'm either the one renting or the one that is providing the rental for short term or whatnot. So thank you very much for all the information that you provide to us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to share.
And we'll put the links for the app and all the links for Justin, for Breezeway, the software company that he works for. So high accolades for all of that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we are out of time today on episode number 13. Thanks, Justin, for being a part of our show. And those of you that are listening, don't forget to check out the video of this podcast on our BrightPath Notes YouTube channel or Elizabeth Maora's YouTube channel as well.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a good one. Till next time.
The Two Wealth Show is produced by Justin Bogard and Super E, sponsored by BrightPath Notes and Elizabeth Maora. Thanks for listening and watching for our show.